So hello, everyone. Today is July 7th, 2021. This is the Atlanta FileMaker Developers Group. My name is David Naedel. Our presenter today is Jeremy Brown from Proof+Geist, right? Plus is silent in there, I think.
Yep.
And he's going to be presenting on creating dashboards in FileMaker using all the new exciting functionality we have. Things with FileMaker 19 and JavaScript. So I'm looking forward to this. So everyone knows, because we have a lot of new people in here, we have these meetings on the first Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're totally remote right now, but even when we're back in person, we're still going to have video sessions that you can join. Everyone is welcome for these always. And like I said, there will always be a meeting that you can join even when we are having our in-person meetings. If you have any ideas about presentations, please let me know. If there's things that you'd like to see, or if you have something that you'd like to share with the group, please let me know. We'd love to have you present, share some interesting projects that you've been working on, an interesting implementation of something. You know, we always love seeing that, or any solutions that you've created. Getting presenters is always a challenge. So please, if you or someone you know would like to speak, let me know. We'd love to have you here. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to Jeremy, and we can see your screen. So it looks good.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm glad that we're all here to talk about dashboards. I think this topic has been covered a lot in recent or in the history of FileMaker. But I think there's been quite a few changes recently that gives us, I think, fresh reason to look back at creating dashboards and such. So I'm interested in talking about it, and we'll go over it. I'm Jeremy Brown at Proof+Geist. I'm the evangelist here, but I'm actually starting to do a lot more development, web stuff, JavaScript stuff, React stuff. It's pretty crazy. I miss creating content, so I'm glad to be able to present anywhere and everywhere about everything that's going on. Today, I want to go through these ideas here. You all can see the agenda, right? That's weird. Okay, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to start with just kind of my personal history of thinking about dashboards. I want to talk a little bit about the purpose of dashboards and whether they're warranted or not. Building dashboards, part one, we'll take a look at the history of what I have found in the community, people talking about building dashboards. And we'll look at part two, and then we're going to look at some examples. So yeah, this should be fun. Now, we're all in different places, but I would like us to interact. We're going to try to do some interaction today. So, and I'm kind of experimenting with this with a piece of software. What I would love for you to do is grab your phone and scan that QR code, or click on the link that I just passed to you through the Google Messages, or type in slido.com and then type in that code. And what I'd love for you to do is interact with me during this presentation, answer some questions, and ask your own questions. So if you would just go ahead and start to answer this question using your devices. It'd be good, just we get practice at using this. I suppose I should do it too. All right. Very nice. So just keep your phone or computer on this page throughout our time together. There will be different questions that pop up that you can choose to participate into. All of the, unless you type in your name, I think all of the responses are anonymous. There we go. Okay. Keep on answering that, as well as questions that I ask you. You may have questions of us, of the group. So in the same token, in the same QR code, if you would, in this section, you can actually ask a question. So throughout this time, if you have questions, you can put them in here, and then we'll try to respond to them. I think if you're using your browser, you can leave that link open the whole time, and as something is active, there's always a Q&A area over there, so you can always type in questions if you like. If you're using your phone, I think you switch at the top. Yeah, you switch at the top to Q&A and polls, and then you can keep on asking questions. So just as a word, it'll be kind of fun. We'll see if we get through this, if I remember it. I like this better than using any of the other interactions, mainly because I can keep the questions for later and write blog posts about them or whatever. All right, so starting with me, my interest in working with dashboards came about simply because I was a teacher, and like everything we ever did was about data and working with data. I built my first system was a student information system at the KIP school that I worked at in Colorado, in Denver, and I built it for the teachers. I built it for me, and I was exploring this idea of dashboards. They seemed to be, back then, an efficient way to display information, to tell a story, to get data across. And to me, they were fascinating because they were part design, part analysis, part, it was an interesting combination of left brain and right brain kind of stuff that was interesting to me. And I found that as people in the FileMaker community were trying to build dashboards, they used all the tricks they could find. And so I was looking at all of those tricks as well. Here's an example of one of my very first dashboards. We had some test data that it's given, I think 3 times a year was given. And I would, all the kids in the entire school would take it, and then I would import the data and work on a dashboard for like the principal to see what percentage of students in a particular test, in a particular test date or subject and year and school for that matter were meeting the goals of the test. So that was pretty cool. And even back then, when I was still kind of new to this, I realized that, okay, the FileMaker chart objects are there, and they only display one thing of data, but I could use a cool dropdown to change it. So going from winter to spring, I was able to update the same layout with different pieces of information. So I thought that was pretty cool. It was a fun way to get into it. And even back then, I think I was I'm not a designer, but I was kind of on a way towards designing. I think the color scheme's pretty awful and there's too much data on here, but I think it was a pretty good first step. So I'm curious about you all. What are your feelings about dashboards? Got 3 choices: yay, meh, or nah. Go ahead and answer that now. Nice. It's good to see that. All right. Very good. All right. So there's 9 of us, I think, me and yeah, I think that's good. All right. So very good. So we are almost all on board. Oh, there's 11 people. Great. Well, welcome. This is great. It's great to see that. So we're going to contribute this. Why don't you go ahead and in the text box there, describe your reasons for that. Alex, did you not get to vote? Sorry if you didn't get to vote. I missed you. Yes, you're right, Heidi. Since we got 1 meh, then everybody else can leave, and I'll just stick with the meh person. I'm kidding. All right, we'll just take a couple more seconds of this just to keep on moving, but nice. Hey, thanks. I appreciate everybody playing the game with me. It's fun to see Ooh, difficult to get clients to actually say what they want on the dashboard. Yep, that's certainly true. Sometimes a waste of time, easy and quick way to skim and ingest. Very nice. All right. Wonderful. Very good. Cool. Well, it's good to see that, and I think that all of this is really worth diving into. Somebody mentioned KPIs. Someone also mentioned it's a waste of time, and then some specific instances where we're using it. So very good. Well, thank you for that. All right, so let us go on. I want to just talk briefly about the purpose of dashboards. The people in the community who have discussed in length about dashboards, they have also brought this idea up. Matt LeVar at AppWorks talked about this recently, five or 6 months ago, and Navar, and he had some great ideas too. But I was doing some reading through one of my favorite books. I was reading through this book, Information Dashboard Design, and I thought it was a pretty cool information guide about dashboards. So I thought I would share some of that. But what do you think the purpose of a dashboard is? Oh, nice. So I think most of these are talking about at a glance information, overview, one place. So yes, yeah, very good. So this has a lot of good information about a lot of good detail about the purpose of dashboards. Very nice. Well, in this book, it's called Information Dashboard Design. This is an older book. I think it was 2006, so it's pretty old. But this guy, Stephen Few, has written more books, so I'm interested in seeing. And I would love to get him on the podcast. So I'm going to try to do that. But he and other folks have identified 4 types of dashboards that are common and used quite a lot. They are strategic, analytical, operational, and tactical. So think a minute what those could be. I think it's important to have a purpose in mind when we're coming up with when we're just starting to design a dashboard. Somebody previously mentioned that it's tough to get out of the client what they actually need on the dashboard. And I think knowing the purpose of it and kind of sort of classifying the dashboard someone's going to build into one of these 4 or possibly others is a good way to start to focus the questions and get to the point with the client on what needs to be in here. So let's review these each quickly. A strategic one is probably the most common one. It is popular for executives. It's that high-level measures, sales expenses per month. That's probably just a highest level that an exec needs. Sometimes it includes forecasts, which is an interesting idea because I have always heard that a dashboard should tell you what is coming up rather than telling you what is now or in the past. And I think that's an interesting idea. And I think it's worth exploring. FileMaker doesn't have any ways to predict, I don't think. I guess you could calculate a running average or something, but so some kinds of dashboards do some prediction there. there's not a whole lot of detail that's needed. And what I find interesting is that a strategic dashboard can rely on static data. It doesn't have to be the latest information that's out there. That's all of the new sales that have come in the last 10 minutes. Doesn't need to be on an executive's dashboard. And this is an interesting one too. No interaction is necessary. So when we're thinking about the tools to build, we can pick the tool that doesn't have any interaction, which we all know is the FileMaker charts objects. Next one is Analytical. Again, static data. Here, the author here suggests that for an analytical database, you really want to have some interaction. You want to be able to drill down and get to the heart of why the bar is trending down or so forth. You want to have a lot of details. You need to have a lot of comparisons, a good amount of history so that they can see everything that's going on in great detail. And you want to have some nice performance evaluators, things that can really look at the data and give you the answer to something, to a question that you have. Another one would be operational. This is it's used for people like, at an airport when they are watching all the airplanes come in. They want to see a dashboard that shows them the latest information. So it has to be dynamic. There have to be alerts built into it so that if we get below or above a certain threshold, we cross one, that an alert is happened right away. And it's really going to be simple. There's not going to be a whole lot of data on there. You may have 7 screens that have 7 different dashboards, and each one of them is focused on one thing. And interactivity would be useful too. If an alert pops up that says the electricity is failing over there, you want to be able to click on where that's at. And tactical would be just I was having a hard time thinking of specific examples. I guess for me, the most specific example right now is like a project manager wanting to make sure that a sprint is getting done and that tasks are getting done, a dashboard that shows her all of that information, how many tasks are left, what the burn down rate is, what the sprint point completion rate is. That would be a tactical database dashboard. So there we go. So those are 4 ways to classify data, dashboards. And so I want to stop here and see, Alex, you just said, Matt. So far we don't have any questions, but please bring those in. What about you? What kinds of dashboards of those 4 or other have you built in your past or are currently building? And you can choose as many as you want. Nice. All right. Very good. Most of us have built operational. They are, like we said, they're the most common. And I think they're the easiest to build. Actually, they may not be true depending on the tools that you have. And we'll have to, that's an interesting exploration to see. Very good. All right. Well, that's good. So we've identified at least 4 ways to classify them. And like I said, it might be easier. It might be easy to help get out of the client what needs to be on a dashboard. We're not going to go into that here simply because we just don't have the time, but that would be an interesting study at a different time. Next question. Do you think dashboards are overused? I will clarify that in our platform, in our world. or general, I guess. I don't want to clarify, or I don't want to limit it to just FileMaker space. That's interesting. Most of us are saying no. That's interesting. Okay, great. I guess I should have asked the inverse. I wonder if they're underused. I wonder if FileMaker developers in particular are less inclined to work with them because they might be complex or crazy to work with. So, all right, well, that's good to know. At least we, as a small group here, don't think that they're overused. Very good. This book that I read spends a lot of time on the design of them and how good design can really add to it, and of course, bad design can defeat the whole purpose of a dashboard, and that's worth study too. But we'll skip over that for now. So, in my time as a FileMaker developer since like 2008 or so, I have watched people write about this. I have watched many videos about this, and I think the community has spent some time talking through and how to build dashboards. Basically, in our world, FileMaker dashboards, if they are built in part one, this is the history, is just using all FileMaker things. Using relationships, using portals, filters, the chart object itself, unstored calc fields, maybe stored calc fields. What else have people used in the past? I think that's maybe hide conditions, maybe drop downs to change data. That's part of the relationships. So in essence, though, we've used all of this stuff to build dashboards. And that's because in FileMaker, chart objects need a list of data or summarized data. They need matching X and Y values. And that can be tough to get to in FileMaker. So just as a quick reminder, we just need a list. We present to the chart object a list, and we let it chart that idea. Yes, it can handle summarized data as far as using summary fields and sorting. And if you place a chart in a certain part on a layout, it will chart different parts of the data or chart different data. But in essence, we are working with lists, and we're passing to the chart object a list of data. I found 5 or 6 just in the last couple of days as I've explored this idea. AppWorks, like I mentioned, Linear Blue has a great one on that from DevCon, from Claris's DevCon in 2016 or 17. There's a lot of great blog posts and videos out there. One that I was particularly drawn to at the very beginning was this one right here. I don't know if you've all seen this, but they actually have quite a few views on YouTube. It was done 9 years ago, so 2011 or 12, they put this together. People at FileMaker Academy, which is composed of quite a few small of development shops out there that contribute to this academy. I haven't seen them active recently. I don't know if any people here are members or were or know what's happening, but this was a great video. A buddy of mine, Samir, was on this before I worked with him when I was at Slang Consulting. But they spent a good hour talking about how they built this dashboard in particular. And it has everything in here that I mentioned previously. They talk about relationships. So you can see there on the anchor there is a dashboard table occurrence, and it has a lot of relationships. I think there's a lot of Cartesian relationships. Is that Cartesian? I think it is, yeah. And multiple equals or equals. So they have built this using relationships in the backdrop. And again, this was in 2011, so I think this was before Execute SQL came out. So they were building it this way. Their layout looked like this. Ton of different chart objects and portals. You can see, let's see, some of those, I think portals have filters on them. Looks like they have a field with global storage at the top with the start date there so that they can update something, and a refresh button and so forth. They pointed out the tables that were underneath the hood of this, and you can see that there's a ton of unstored calculation fields there where they are summing up data or pulling data from relationships, doing a bunch of work to get that to happen. So I think this was, and those of you who were around in 2011 and before, this was how people built dashboards. Was there any other ways, or can anybody speak to other historical building of dashboards here?
Maybe just some really basic web viewer things and writing HTML out. You had to kind of calculate it all by hand.
Yep. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I hadn't seen anything like that, but yeah, there may be something out there about that. So this was the history. This was actually something I put together recently too, just for the fun of it. I actually did a blog post on using creating dashboards with JSON. So I built this 3 chart object dashboard that runs on those fields at the top, the year field and the products field. I can click in and out of those. In this case, the data comes from this JSON object that's on the left and calculations inside of the chart objects that pull from certain parts of the JSON. My point of the blog post was to talk about one of the custom functions we have, which is called json.getValues@path, where it could actually sum up the $keep property for all of the apples array elements over there on the left if I wrote up the correct syntax for that. It was really slow, but this was introduced in 2006 or in FileMaker 16. JSON was anyway, and so we could even build with that. I guess it's a little bit newer to use JSON for the chart objects. It's kind of a combination. So this worked out pretty well. As I said, it tended to be really slow, and it wasn't workable for a lot of higher, larger data sets. This was just like 12 objects 12 elements in an array, and was calculated. But I thought it was pretty clever because, again, I could click one of the products over there on the side, and all 3 of the charts would re-render with that product added to the 3 charts. All right, I'm going to stop and see if we have any questions. Still no questions. That's great. What about you? If you have built a FileMaker dashboard using FileMaker objects, describe that for us. Or what is your experience? Here's the wrong one. Lines and graphs. Okay. Old-fashioned. It's canned. Yep. Very nice. Yeah, so we didn't have a whole lot of tools back then. And like I have found with people who have been here in FileMaker since FileMaker 3 or 4 days, maybe the needs for dashboards back then were just not that great, or the information that needed to be displayed was simply strategic and high level and didn't need to be refreshed constantly or have a ton of interaction. So I don't know, maybe it was okay to build it all like that back then. But obviously now we've all for some reason and in some way we have all experienced this. Everything has to be connected, has to have great interaction, slick looking, animated, all this kind of stuff. So it's I don't know if we can rely on those methods anymore. Although I will say, I know CEOs of development shops that still use the FileMaker chart objects to look at how the company is doing. They have no problem using that because they know how to collect the data correctly for the chart, and they don't need it to be flashy. They just need to see a trend line or so forth. So very good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Sorry if I didn't get your response. I assume it can stay. I'm not sure if it'll stay active if I let go, but here we go. All right, so here we are, building dashboards part 2. With the current tools in the platform, how should dashboards be built? And I wrote this question specifically because I definitely have an answer to this question, and I would come down on one side pretty heavily. So one of the biggest needs of a dashboard is the ability to get data. We have, dashboards require lots of data. And so you're going to need to get lots of data from one or more tables in the system, or even in another file. So getting data. So let's look at the ways that we can get data. Well, we have execute SQL now. We have JSON. I didn't mention that. I should have done that, although it kind of flows into the next one. We have the execute FileMaker data API script step, which, that's the newest method. People are starting to think about caching data and storing data in a field for use in the dashboard. And then we can use scheduled scripts to summarize data, because ultimately, when you want to post the total sales for the month of January, you have to sum up all of the sales for the month of January in some manner. So we can use scripts to run summary calculations, store that information somewhere, and be ready for the dashboard. Another key component of modern dashboards is interaction. So when we require interaction with our dashboards, we want to look at JavaScript charting libraries. I don't know of any good way without a ton of tricks, to build a dashboard that has interaction using just native FileMaker stuff. The obvious exception is portals. When you want to show lists of data in a dashboard, you can click on a row and go to the related record. Another one is configuration. If we want color schemes to work exactly how we want it to do, and we want to tweak the formatting of the numbers or the y-axis, we need to take a look at JavaScript libraries. Summarizing data. Did mention that we could summarize data from with FileMaker scripting, but again, that data is then stored, and the summary is old. Maybe that's okay, but if we need something a little bit fresher, we're going to turn to JavaScript libraries. So next one would be refreshing data. Refreshing data and making it happen instantly, we want to turn to JavaScript libraries. So I think it's my strong opinion, and I'm going to ask what you all think, but it's my strong opinion that A dashboard is the easiest way, the most accessible way, the richest way to build these things, these visual displays of data, is in using JavaScript. FileMaker, as great as it is to store data and secure the data and so forth, it's just not built to handle JavaScript, handle the needs of a dashboard. I'm excluding Tableau here, by the way, because I've just never touched it, and I've always heard that the connector just doesn't work. I don't even know if it's still a thing anymore. I've never actually explored it. So because I think JavaScript is actually the easiest way to get stuff done. All right. Let's see if there are any questions. All right. So there are some, yeah, there we go. XM chart. That's a whole, I think, is that a product that somebody sells in the community or gives away for free? I think that's correct. Server-side processing. Yes, we can definitely do that. And I'm good with that. I've done that many times, but I think I'm gonna say that JavaScript is way better at it and can handle it better, and we'll demonstrate that in a bit. All right, what about you? So, given my position here, let's just say you had no other choice but to build a dashboard using JavaScript. What do you see as the biggest hurdle for you getting into it, into exploring building dashboards with JavaScript? Nice. Nice, looks good. All right, so far, it's everything that everybody has said, is knowing what options, what libraries to use, knowing JS in general. I put this in here, time to actual write the code for JavaScript, because that does take some time, and it is something new that we're not doing FileMaker stuff if we're writing JavaScript. Great. All right. Well, thank you for those responses. It's good to know that. In this remaining time, I'm just going to show a couple examples of using dashboards in JavaScript, and I'll point out all of the features that make this a viable alternative. Todd talks a lot about using JavaScript as an escape hatch when as a last resort. I think, after working so hard in this, that I think that JavaScript is the first resort for displaying data in a visual way. And it's always been my goal, and maybe other people's, to make JavaScript, and specifically now dashboards here, as accessible as possible to people. So I'm hoping to do that here in these last couple minutes, and then maybe further down the road. So JavaScript examples. We're going to take a look at how we can build them in JavaScript. The key components to JavaScript libraries that are great benefits, that I say are way better than FileMaker, is that we can completely configure any JavaScript library so that the chart can look and do anything we want it to do. We can fairly easily put together a bunch of separate charts into a nice looking kind of grid using HTML's grid system that's out there. JavaScript is much faster at summarizing data than FileMaker. And when we get to the next one, large data sets, summarizing the data using FileMaker for using JavaScript is so much better. And I'll show you examples of that in a bit. JavaScript can handle large data sets way better than pulling data through relationships, unstored calculations, even execute SQL. It can just JavaScript can handle it so much better. And of course, JavaScript comes with a ton of interactivity and there. So those are all of the key components, the things that make it much more desirable to use JavaScript than anything else. All right, let's see if we have any other questions. Nope, we're good. Let's keep on going. What about you? Which benefits that I just talked about when it comes to working with building dashboards, not even talking about JavaScript, but building dashboards, which benefit appeals to you? Which feature of very cool. Great. Pretty mixed here. Configurable. To me, this is actually very good that it's pretty evenly split. The grid system is less important, and I get that, but now there we go. But everything else is pretty appealing to people who need to build dashboards for clients, to solve client problems, to tell a story with the data, to show them that. So this is what we need to do. So we really should be turning to JavaScript. So let's take a look at some examples of how this can be done. And I'm just going to focus on 2 right now. And we're going to try this. I've got it recorded in here, so we're going to see if this works, see if I can talk over the video well enough. We're going to start with the first one. This is one that I have spent hundreds of hours working with. I really like it. It's Dcjs. I know, Heidi, I think at one time you were working with it, still are maybe. Yes. Dcjs is a library that builds dashboards using JavaScript. It actually uses D3, but it makes D3 a little bit more accessible. And it uses a companion library called Crossfilter to summarizes the thousands of records that you throw at it. So in this case, we're using Dcjs to take all of the records. Well, I'll show you that in a minute. All right, so I'm going to try this. Let's see how this works. All right, so I'm going to show, here is my Dcjs work that I have done. I'm using visual. Here it is. Here's the end results. This is a dashboard here that contains, I think, 8,000 records that's charted about 6 different ways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got a sales over time, the companies, and different things down there. What's cool about this library is that it's all connected. So we can use bars and pie sections on this chart to filter other charts. So we're seeing some great connection there between the data. And this is pretty unique for a library, and it's because it's using this cross-filter library, it's making it work. So here is the JavaScript that I've been writing using Visual Studio Code, and I've got just a basic development environment set up here. I've got my index.html file, which contains links to the different libraries that I'm using. It's got some basic CSS, and then I am using Bootstrap to put charts in different sections of the grid. So it looks nice, and there's a little bit of shadow, and so there's basically cards all over the screen. This one right here is the sales over time, and the chart that I write in JavaScript is going to be placed into this div because it's got that ID there. So that's the chart that I'll be writing, and it'll be placed in there. Over here in the JavaScript file, the JavaScript, there's the actual line chart, and it's going to be connected to that div, the sales over time. And here's the actual code that I'm writing to create the JavaScript. I'm going to pause it there for a second. This is the actual code, about 20 lines, 15 lines here, that renders, takes all of the data that I've got, and I'll show that in a bit, and it turns it into that chart. And if you study it for a little bit, you can see it's not that challenging to understand. Yes, you do have to read about some of these things, like what a dimension is and what a group is and so forth. But this is actually pretty doable. And this file in general is sort of a template that I'm putting together, that I'm trying to build to make it as easy as possible for people to get to it. But it's meant to illustrate the basics of it so that people can get into it. I'm just going to point out a couple things. So what this library does, cross filter, it takes all of the records that I've got in the set that I've passed to it, using JavaScript, using the FileMaker functions or script steps, and it summarizes the data. And I'll have to show the summary in a little bit, but a chart needs two things. It needs a dimension there on line 116 and a group. A dimension is simply what's going to go across the x-axis, and the group is basically how do you want to crunch the numbers? How do you want to count or sum or average or whatever? How do you want to work with that data and display it then in the y-axis space? So in this environment, I'm writing it, and actually I'm illustrating that right here, the group and the dimension. If I were to go in here and make changes to this code, the way that I've got this set up is if I change the color picker from 3 to 0, it's going to update immediately in the FileMaker side. Yes, I do have to press the load data button again, but that's simply because every time I'm loading new data, I'm loading the data again, I'm loading the JavaScript again. So, but this is pretty cool because I can do anything that I want to for each of the charts in this system. Here, I am formatting let's see if this works. Yeah, I'm formatting the title there to be exactly what I want. The number doesn't come in with a $sign on it, but I have used what the library can do to format, to put a $sign at the beginning of it, and to put the decimal point 00 and so forth. So this is everything, this is what you can do with the JavaScript stuff. And this is why I turn to it pretty much all the time now. What else? In this case, there's a cool little feature for a line chart where you can turn on a brush and then you get some nice zooming in of the data. So you have a nice focus and refiltering of the data based on what you choose. And also what's cool about this is, I'm not sure if I show this very well, but notice the x-axis down there, it's only by month. I didn't actually put that in there. I sent in 8,000 records of data, and the chart itself decided that it was going to break up the data by month and just display months at a time because there was so much data that it had to display. If I only gave it a little bit of data, like with a shorter period of time, a shorter date range, it would reformat the x-axis to show a different, it might say January 20, 2017 or whatever it is. So it gets to choose how it wants to format the data. I think that's pretty cool. So I'm just going to show one last thing here on this. When, like I said, the data comes in, it's just numbers, and I can use the JavaScript to format it as I want it to. So I'm going to try to do that. Actually, I'm going to just up the speed of this just a bit. I'll talk faster. But we've got this company's bar chart, and what I want to do is I want to change the formatting so that I want to change the formatting so that it's just better readable. So let's see if I can get that done here. Oh, in this library, there's a property called title where I can pass it a JavaScript function. If you read that, it's not that difficult to understand what's happening. And I can say, I want you, for every one of those bars, I just want you to write the string hi there. And I demonstrate that when I reload it, I hover over every one of them, and the word hi there is just there. So it's just going to be there for every one of them. Obviously, I don't want that. So what I want to do is I want to see what kind of data is coming in. So I'm doing a console log there to just kind of refresh myself. When this runs, here is what each of them shows up. It looks like this. It has grouped them by company name, and then it has totaled up a certain key that I've asked it to total up. So it's just the number 129398 there. So I can take that and I can format it as I would like. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, I want you to return d.key. So that's the name of the company, and put a space in there. And then I want you to do d.value. So if I do that, then I kind of go back to the original where it shows the company name and then just a number. But I actually want to, I'm going to put a colon there. I'm going to format this using JavaScript. And I'm going to say, I want you to put $. I want you to make it to be $. format. So that's a certain function that I wrote that puts a $sign in front of it. And now you can see there maybe that the $sign is in front. And it's got a comma and it's got the decimal point. So it makes it much more readable. So this is, and I'm doing the same thing for the label there that's on top of every one of them. First of all, I have to console log to see what's returned. So for every label, what is it actually returning to the JavaScript? And we can see that it is going to be this object here where the key and the value are stored. So what I want to do is I want to find data.value, and I want to format it a certain way. So I'm going to do that right here. I'm going to say return d.data.value, but I want to format that with another formatting that I've got. I think this is the right one. Let's see. So there it is. This is the way that I've written the formatting using D3. And let's just skip ahead a little bit. If I did that, so you can kind of see that it's been formatted, but I actually have a better formatter that I want to use, because when you're looking at the label, you may not want to see you don't need to see the exact number. So I'm going to reformat it to be that right there. And when I refresh this, now you can see at the top, it's just rounding the numbers off and it's putting a K next to it, or an M in the case. It's just to make the formatting, the number, easier to read. And that's really it to working with that kind of chart. So there we go. Now just last quickly here, this is what I'm doing. I'm using the execute data API script step. I'm passing it in a query to the sales table, which has, like I said, 7,500 records. And I'm getting all 7,500 records because I've got a limit of 1,000 or 10,000 here. And I'm passing that to the JavaScript using the new functioning. Well, not new anymore, but there it is. And when I do that, the database, the JavaScript is able to summarize that in a heartbeat. Every time you see that load, it is doing it on its own that fast, summarizing it. And it's coming in via this function, right? I'm not sure. Right, back up just a sec. Right here, where it is? There it is, window.loadData right here. I'm passing in the data. I'm doing some work with it to parse it and then to kind of reconstruct it a bit. And then I am giving it to the JavaScript to summarize it. And that's that. So that's the advantage of using this. Dcjs is a great library for summarizing large data sets and giving being able to really take the raw data and summarize it however you want it to do, however you want it to be. So like I said, I spent hundreds of hours with this. Still am working on it, learning it, and am still part of exploring what can be done with it. See if there's any more questions. A lot of optimization is required to summarize large data sets. That's correct. I don't know when someone put this in there, but That is correct, but JavaScript is showing that, hey, you can do that in a heartbeat. I'm going to stop there because it's at the end of time, but Apex charts is another one that I've worked with it in a development environment, and it can produce this. So Apex charts is not a dashboarding library. It's a chart library that I've actually used twice to create two different charts forming the start of a dashboard. I'm passing in a set of data for this one here. Notice there's two axes there that has two different data sets. And I'm passing in a third data set for this one right here with different x-axis values. And I'm asking the library and the JavaScript to do this for me. Apex charts doesn't summarize data. I could use JavaScript to summarize data, or what I chose to do here is I just chose to summarize the data as it asked for. So there's the data. It's the same 8,000 records. I actually used my work with Kevin Frank, Jsonata to summarize the data using JavaScript, I guess. And then I reformatted the data to fit the necessary requirements for Apex. And then I passed that in. So there is some work to this, but I think that as we do this, as we work on it and as we explore it, and as tools like this make it more accessible, it's easy to understand and to learn. It's my personal opinion nowadays that FileMaker developers just need to learn some JavaScript, need to learn how this works and get into the weeds with Apex charts and understand all the parts of it. It's another tool, and it's becoming increasingly more useful and more required. Is that a word? So there we go. So I'm going to make these two little templates available for people. It was based on some work that I had done with Kevin Frank. I wrote a blog post about a JavaScript development environment that I've been working on, where I can run a development server and see the changes over in FileMaker when I write the code here in VS Code. So I'll get these out to people. Look for a blog post very soon about these. I'm interested to see if people can read this and sort of work their way through it and understand what's going on. So there we go. All right. So I would love if you have, thank you, Heidi. The Q&A thing didn't come up here. But if you have any other thoughts or questions, please ask them here. You can always reach out to me and talk to me about this stuff. I'm really interested in making this more accessible to people. So please give me your thoughts about it. Oh, we did have some. Okay, so let's do that. Present. Boom. Let's see if we can do that. All right, there we go. Boom. All right, so see if we have any more questions or thoughts. Is it coming up? No offense, but XM chart generates better charts. Sounds good. I'll take a look at it. Great work. Thank you, Tim. And how likely, last question, how likely on a scale of 0 to 10 are you to explore, how likely are you to explore, I'm not sure that's right, using JavaScript in dashboards? If you are at 0, 1, 2, or 3, please feel free to reach out and let me know. I would love to know why, so I can not convince you, but I can prepare for the next person who is hesitant to do that. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. It was great to talk with you. And, I'm glad. Thanks for participating and playing the silly game over here. It's fun to explore new technologies to try stuff. So there we go. Please reach out, jeremy.brown@Geist at proofgeist.com, and I'll be glad to talk with you anytime. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. This was an excellent presentation. I really enjoyed it. I'll give a round of applause if you're there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was really fantastic. Thank you very much. Just so everyone remembers too, our meetings are on the first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We send out meeting reminder emails that tell you the topic of the presentation and give you the meeting link. If you'd like to be added to that list, just send me an email, david@bluefeathergroup.com. Or if you'd like to present sometime, we'd love to have you presenting. Also, if you just have some ideas for things that you'd like other people to present about, something that you want to learn more about, let me know, and I'll try to find a presenter who is interested in speaking on that topic. And with that, I think we are all set.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Nice.